Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyofacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyofacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I'm delighted to welcome Jodi Murphy, Director of Strategic Partnerships, Regent Seven Seas Cruises. I have long had a desire to sail Regent Seven Seas, stemming from my research in my first cruising book, The Joy of Cruising, where I researched an organization, Friends of Festival at Sea, which organizes very high-end group cruises to exotic locations, many on Regent, which at the time I wasn't very familiar with. Since then, Regent Seven Seas has been on my bucket list. Jodi Murphy is a seasoned travel industry professional with 25 years of experience at Regent Seven Seas Cruises, where she currently serves as Director, Strategic Accounts. In her role, she collaborates with travel advisors to bring Regent's ultra-luxury, all-inclusive experiences to discerning travelers. Regent Seven Seas Cruises is truly unrivaled at sea, offering immersive exploration, world-class hospitality, luxurious space, and exceptional cuisine. Qualities that define its brand campaign. Nobody does it better. Jodi is passionate about luxury cruising and believes in the transformative power of travel. One of our most memorable Regent experiences was sailing to Alaska aboard Seven Seas Explorer with her children in July 2024. An adventure that deepened her love for exploration and the unparalleled service Regent provides. Welcome, Jodi, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
How you doing?
I'm doing really good today. Very good. And you?
I am doing okay. What now? I'm in North Carolina. Where am I chatting with you at?
I am located in Iowa.
Okay. Is that home? Well, you're getting ready to tell us about home, but curiosity question: how'd you end up in Iowa? Is that where you're from?
Well, yes. And so when I tell people that I live in Iowa, everybody, usually the response is Iowa. Why Iowa? Of course, there's no oceans here. But I am from here originally. As soon as I graduated high school, I left and moved away into Omaha, Nebraska, where I started my career with Regent Seven Seas Cruises in the call center in Omaha, Nebraska. So then eventually moving to South Florida and moving into the sales role, into the sales department. I lived in Florida 10 years, and then the pandemic happened. And we all discovered, everybody, you can work from anywhere. Virtual is easy. And so I did ask if I could relocate back home where our family is in Iowa, and they agreed to that. So that is why I'm here in Iowa. And of course, we have two small kids. It's a small town, safe. They can ride around on their bikes. And, it's just a different life than being in a big city for them. And that's what we wanted.
So Omaha, Nebraska, that's inland as well, right?
Yes. Yep. We're about an hour from Omaha.
And then you moved to South Florida. I suspect you were on the East Coast of Florida. I lived in South Florida 9 years, but I was on the West Coast, Fort Myers. And you probably were near Fort Lauderdale?
Yes. Yeah. In the Fort Lauderdale area.
Well, we've kind of gotten ahead of ourselves. I was going to say, before we discuss Regent Seven Seas and the path that led you there, to tell our listeners about yourself, where you're from, where you live, your background growing up, and then as an adult. So you already told us much of that, but tell us anything else you'd like to tell us about yourself. It's anything you'd like to share.
Gosh, well,
Well, you already said you have
two
two
children,
kids.
so married, and two children. They are 9 and 12, and a boy and a girl. So we are very busy right now in the midst of sports every season. And being in a small town, they play every season of sports. So, right now it's track for junior high, and then we'll start baseball and softball and then football and volleyball. It just goes on and on, over and over in a circle. So we're very busy, and I do travel quite a bit. My husband thankfully works here in town and has a job where he can leave if needed. He could pick up the kids. So it really works for us and their ages and stuff. But our kids actually had their first experience on a cruise ever, and it was on a Regent cruise last summer in Alaska. So I'd say that that was, they started out high, and they're not going to be able to go to go down from here.
Yeah, yeah. To be on, a luxurious cruise before you're even 10 years old. My goodness.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to they're going to probably have to adjust their expectations a little bit. Unless, who knows, maybe you plan on taking them sole exclusively on Regent for the next several
I
years.
mean, I guess we'll have to see. I did tell them though when we were there, I said, this isn't every day. This is not how it is, kids. So don't, don't get used to this. But they really enjoyed it, and they had a wonderful time. So,
Anything else in your background you want to share?
you know, uh, I've been with Regent for my whole career in cruising as an adult, Regent being my first job. So I've started, kind of down in not in the bottom, but started in reservations, and then a lot of people have in this company, and then work your way up to different positions. So I've lived and breathed Regent for 25 years, and when I was 19, I went on my first Regent cruise, and that was to Tahiti. On the Paul Gauguin, and at the time we actually had the Paul Gauguin. We rented that ship. We at least, and we did the every 7 day Society Island trip. So I was 19, and I went with two other girls uh, to Tahiti, and I, stepped on that ship and that destination. If you've been there, it's amazing. And I said, I'm never leaving this company, and I've never left, and I'm thankfully still here, and that's my plan anyway.
So what led you to Regent Seven Seas at 19?
I was in a travel school, vocational travel school. Just I thought that I actually wanted to be a flight attendant, and then I flew on several airplanes and realized I did not want to do that. But so so someone from Regent came and talked to us at school, and I thought, well, that sounds like a pretty good deal.
This
And
was this was at the you were at like a travel school.
yeah, yeah.
This was like college level or
Uh-huh.
between high school and college.
Like a college course, a vocational school, yeah. So they came and talked to us, and I'd never heard of the cruise line. I never thought about cruises, Of course, being from the Midwest, I don't know anything about cruises. So yeah, so that's where it started, and I applied and got a position, and the rest is history, I suppose.
Curiosity question: Did any of your schoolmates apply along with you, and did any of them join you?
No, it was just me, and I don't even know, being so long ago, where the others ended up going, as far as their career in the travel industry. But nope, it was just me.
So give us some background on the company and its fleet.
All right, so Regent is, we are about a 35-year-old company. We've got 6 ships currently sailing in our fleet, and our largest ship is 750 guests. So smallest is 490. So we are all suite accommodations and 98% private balcony. So only one of our ships actually has window suites categories and nothing lower than that. But that ship actually will be leaving our fleet in 2026, where we'll be adding another new class of ships, which will be the max that we'll have of 850 guests on board. And that will be our fleet will be all suite, all balcony ships.
And so that's a new class. When is that premiere for you? That just 26?
Yes, so December of 2026, our new class of ships. It's called the Prestige class. And the first ship, and it'll be one of 2. The next one will be coming in 2029. And the first ship will be named Seven Seas Prestige. So we are soon going to be launching this information coming out, opening the first part of the season for this ship very, very soon.
What's the newest ship of your current fleet?
That is Seven Seas Grandeur. Grandeur came on in December of 2024. So 750 guests.
So it's only been out a few months.
A few months, well, a few years, a year.
No, didn't you say 2024?
December of 2023. December 2023. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
that's my bad. So yes.
So Regent Seven Seas, for my listeners, is characterized as a luxury cruise line. For those who have not yet experienced a luxury cruise, Jodi, differentiate in general a luxury cruise from a traditional cruise.
Well, on Regent Seven Seas cruises specifically, we are the most inclusive luxury experience. So from the moment you step on board, you don't have to pay anything else unless you want to with us. Now we include specialty dining, we include Wi-Fi, we include alcohol, we include valet laundry, in-suite minibar that's replenished daily in your suite. Certain categories have a one-night hotel that's included pre-cruise. We have butler service in select categories. It's just literally Wi-Fi is included, gratuities included, so literally everything is included. And our ships being small is a huge, huge different experience in itself. So, maybe you're used to sailing on a ship with 3,000 people. Imagine sailing on a ship with 750 people, where it could be a full ship and you would never know. There's not people everywhere. You're not waiting in lines. You're not having to get out a card to pay for everything. Even if you did have a beverage package, you still had to get out a card. With us, it's just included, and that's a wonderful experience. And imagine getting on and off of a ship and not having to wait in a line. We actually even include shore excursions. There's multiple shore excursions in every single port of call that we include. And they're not just a city tour and a bus tour and a walking tour. There's some truly amazing tours included. And you know how much that you spend on these tours, right? With having
Sure.
to add up all of these things. So we just include it all on a small ship, and it is a wonderful experience.
This question is probably a little tougher. How would you contrast Regent with other luxury cruise lines?
That is a little tougher for me because I haven't experienced the other yet. But I know that we are the most inclusive out of, the luxury experience. I know that some of the other luxury cruises, they may include shore excursions, but they give you one or two to choose from, for example, and we include multiple. Now, also destinations. So our ships being smaller, we can visit ports of call that maybe those others aren't able to visit,
What are some of
things
your
like that.
most popular ports of call or most exotic ports of call?
Well, I mean, we go everywhere, Paul. We have 550 destinations that we visit worldwide. So we likely cover anywhere that is on your travel list to visit. Of course, first time guests with Regent typically are sailing in Alaska or the Mediterranean. We have, of course, the typical summer season and many different options and ports and itineraries that we offer. But we also have the exotic destinations of Asia, round trip Tokyos. We've got South America. We have world cruises. We have grand voyages, those longer cruises. We've got it all.
So I was going to ask you about world cruises. Do you have any cruise, any ship right now that's on an extended cruise? What kind of extended cruises do you offer? 3 months, 100 days?
So it depends, but our world cruise right now, so our world cruise for 2027, for example, is 140 nights.
Okay.
Now, guests are able to, if you didn't want to do the full world cruise, there are segments available that you are able to do and choose whichever segments. And then we also have grand voyages available. So that might be a Grand Asia Pacific, where it might be 90 nights, for example, or Grand Circle South America, 65 nights. Grand European Sojourn, you know, 80 nights. And I don't know the exact number of nights. I'd have to look it up. But that, for example. And then there are also segments of those as well. So again, if you didn't want to do the full cruises, you could take segments of those.
What's the longest Regent cruise you personally have done?
My personal longest was probably 9 nights, and that would have been the last. Nothing crazy. No, I can't. What?
Yeah, okay. So you haven't done any of those. Well, I guess you
I
have to
have to
work.
work. Yeah,
So
and I have a
yeah.
family and school and work and yeah, so no. But typically our guests, our guests they range in age, but our older guests, our older clientele, those are retired, are able to take those longer cruises.
Now I assume your guests trend skew older because older people can are more likely to be able to afford cruising on high end cruises. Do you get very many Gen X's, millennials, Gen Z's on the cruise
You know,
on Regent?
Well, I think that we're starting now. We have different types of Regent clients and four different types of Regent clients that actually we have identified. Uh, but the broad range of Regent clients is going to start about age 45. So 45 plus. The average guest with us is over 60. But I'm 44, for example. I love Regent cruises, but I've been cruising on Regent since I was 19. And so that's, it's typically not typical, but we are, looking at, uh, you know, bringing those younger Gen X or, we'll get to the millennials eventually, but attracting them to Regent cruises with maybe shorter itineraries and things like that. But we have a lot of information on the Regent guest and a lot of people have this perception of what luxury cruising is and a luxury cruise line and they might think that their perception of a luxury cruise line is that it's very pretentious and people are very snooty or stuffy on board. And I get that all of the time. But when people sail on board, they will realize that it is actually not that way at all. Um, with the guests that we have identified and with the information on who they are, honestly, our main two types of guests. They're not even the most wealthy person out there. They are looking for a seamless experience that they don't have to get out a card and pay for everything. That wonderful experience of just being able to enjoy their trip and sailing with other like-minded people. So there's this perception that we have to move to get away from, because people think, luxury is scary, or, oh, it's very expensive. But when you look at, Paul, maybe what guests are paying on some of these premium cruise lines, sailing in suites and balconies from the beginning to the very end of their cruise, they could have potentially sailed on a Regent for about the same price, because you've got to look at that start to finish.
How about, you talked about age groups and demographics in general. How about children? I know that Regent accepts children because your children say, oh, but talk about children on Regent ships.
So we typically don't have a lot of kids. One of my coworkers, I would hear her say that Regent likes kids, but we don't love kids. We don't have the rock climbing walls and the water slides and that kind of thing. But in the summer, we do have an amazing children's program that is included, and that starts at age 5 to 17. So there are options for kids with us. And so those multi-gen families, if grandma and grandpa are taking their entire family on this trip of a lifetime, they can go on Regent because there are options for the kids. And my kids, they absolutely loved it. They didn't even do the children's program all of the time when it was offered. They chose to do it, what they wanted to do. But I remember at the end of the cruise, they were out, and there's a sports deck and they were playing ping pong or maybe pickleball, one of those. But they came back, and it's so small, we could let them go off and then they could, come back. And they came back, and our son he was drinking a frozen daiquiri. Of course, it was a virgin daiquiri, but they just went to the pool bar and ordered a daiquiri, and the crew loved the kids, and they just like he owned the place, like he owned it.
When you took the kids, were there other kids their age range that they could interact with?
Yes, there was. So yes. And this was in Alaska, and typically in Alaska, you will find more kids on board, and being in the summertime. So yes, there was.
By the way, what did your kids think of Alaska?
Oh gosh, they absolutely loved it. And I think that, and I don't, have you been to Alaska?
Yes, I've only been once, but that, I tend not to repeat destinations on purpose, but that's one that we are definitely going back to. We were just.
Yeah, I was going to say, it is a destination that you can go to multiple times and see multiple different things. Yes. Yeah, they loved it. And I've thought of when, they're older in high school, going back and even doing more the next time. But I did remember what I was going to say is in Alaska and some of their other destinations in the summer, sometimes we do offer a kids sail free program. And that would be as a third or more berth. But it's a great opportunity, and still includes the kids' shore excursions, the children's program. So those are great options with us and in multi-gen families, and you'll see quite a few of them on.
I suspect the majority of my listeners, and maybe I'm being presumptuous here, but I think I'm right, have not sailed on a top luxury cruise line like Regent. Although given what you said, I think they have an idea of what to expect and what they've probably read and seen on their own. But for those who have an aspiration to travel on that class of ship, Now I know that they're not going to see, as you said, rock climbing walls and all of that, and tubes and roller coasters and all. But in general, what's it like on a luxury ship?
Um, I would say it's just there's an ease of everything. Now, I know that some other brands, companies would say that their ship is the destination because they have I mean, they're huge, right? It's like a mall inside, and ours are not like that. Now, ours are, you're going to these destinations to learn about these places with art, culture, history, music, food, and wine. Um, our cruises, guests typically aren't going to lay on a beach and with our toes in the sand. This is more about getting out there and checking things off of your bucket list and learning. So our ships, though, they're absolutely beautiful and luxurious ships. There are things to do on board. We have the entertainment. There are shows, there are casinos. We have lectures on all of our itineraries to learn about the ports that you were visiting. There are games such as trivia, bingo, and believe it or not, and you might laugh or when you hear me say this, but bingo and trivia, it is very competitive with the people and a lot of fun, actually. You can earn points for earn Regent points, and then for prizes, you can cash in for Regent logo items at the end.
Yeah, I've learned, particularly trivia is very competitive,
Hmm.
and I thought I knew a lot of trivial facts. I can't even begin to compare with some of the folks who are into those games.
Yes, yes, they're very serious. But yes, but the ships are small. There's multiple dining options. Yeah, the suites are beautiful. The minimum square feet, size of a suite being 300 square feet.
What about like shows and entertainment? What's that like?
Well, we offer the same shows, I would say, on a smaller scale as the larger ships do. We have the Broadway style shows, theatrical acts, magicians, um, and things like that. We usually, well, there is only one showing an evening of the shows, not multiple, as there was on larger ships that I've experienced. The casinos, and then there's many bars and lounges on board. There's more of a bar that would play live music for dancing and karaoke type. Then there is more of a piano bar, and then bars that just play live music that people can dance to. So there are many, many options.
I try with guests. I try to always provide the listeners, an overview of their cruising background. Let's talk about yours. When and what ship was your very first cruise?
It was back in 2000 on the Paul Gauguin to French Polynesia. And
So Paul Gauguin, they were owned by Regent.
we didn't own the Paul Gauguin. No, we didn't own it. We rented the ship. Um, and we did it for quite a long time. Uh, so that was my very first experience.
Now, when you say you rented the ship, does that mean Regent kind of just ran it for Paul Gauguin?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the logistics. I would say that that sounds like it would be true. We leased it, and it did its own. It was already there in French Polynesia, so we just ran the itineraries and managed everything there.
That was after you had started for Regent.
Yes.
So you never cruised then prior to becoming an employee.
No, I don't even know if I'd flown on an airplane at that point. Just
Wow.
being from a small town, I don't know, you don't, a lot of people don't do stuff like
Your
that.
first your first cruise was on Paul Gauguin. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like That's ultra luxury.
Yeah, yeah. I'll never forget that ship. I loved it.
Were you anxious joining a cruise line and had never cruised? What if you got seasick? Were you worried about that?
No, I think, and I'm still like this to this day. I just roll with the punches. I'm very laid back and easygoing, and like, all right, we're gonna go cruise. Let's go. Let's do this. And I've only been seasick one time, and it never happened again, which it was the worst thing. I think I could, well, I could probably experience worse, but getting seasick was not fun. But it only happened once, and so yeah.
What were your first impressions on that first cruise?
I was very young, and I couldn't believe that I had this opportunity, this amazing experience to to cruise, number one, and on this beautiful ship. I mean, I think that ship was 320 guests. So just, I've really grown up with this company and grown up and learned, and I've gotten to experience so much. It just is, I'm very grateful for all of it.
So how long after Paul Gauguin was your next until your next cruise?
Now, I think that my next one was probably a familiarization trip that they had sent some of us on, employees, and we went on like I don't know if it was just a 5 night or split up a longer Caribbean cruise. That was the Caribbean or Mexico. Uh, but there also to experience the ships because we were selling them. We were in reservations and we needed to experience, what we were selling. So it wasn't long after that.
So have you been on other lines other than Reach?
I have, yes. And it's wonderful for me to experience other lines. So I know what that comparison is between us and these other brands. I don't know if you wanted me to name what I've been on, but
If you feel comfortable.
yeah, no, and nothing against there's anybody. There's a cruise for everyone. So I think my first experience other than Regent happened to be on a Royal Caribbean ship. And then I went on my first river cruise. It was an Ama River cruise last year, and I loved that. That was so cool. The ships being small.
What ship was it, Jody?
That was the Ama Bella.
Okay, because I went on my first river cruise last year as well,
Did
and
you
it
like
was
it?
it was yes. Oh, absolutely. It was on Alma Christina.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, I love that. Now a river cruise. I mean, it's logistically it's very different, but I suspect in terms of the demographics, in terms of the food, excursions, there's probably some similarities with the river cruising and luxury cruising.
I would say a little bit, and when I've talked to other travel advisors too, and they've shared what they would think that a luxury river cruise line would be, compared to a ocean. But I really enjoyed it. It was very small, and there's no entertainment really on those, and that's something that's different. And then I was on two celebrity cruises this past year on their new ships, the Ascent and the Beyond, and I enjoyed that. I thought it was a great experience again for me to see because there's thousands of people on those ships when compared to us with under 800. So I could see that difference, but I did enjoy both experiences.
Yeah, I've been on Ascent and Beyond. I love those ships. I consider them near luxury. Uh, and but yeah, that whole celebrity edge class. Now let's go back a little bit. I'm kind of intrigued about your choice of Royal Caribbean. What motivated you to cruise on them, or was it your kids?
Neither actually. It was a work trip. So in my position, I have the opportunity to go on trips that are through the company that are being hosted by, say, your um, agency or other agencies. So that was why I was on it with for a trip with a travel agency.
So have your kids been on any other line other than that one Regent cruise?
No, they haven't. And that's, where I probably did it wrong, but maybe I did it right. I don't know. But it was really cool when we were in port, and I think it was in Juneau specifically. There was a large royal ship that was docked there or was anchored there, and the kids could see up at the very top how there was the water slides and that up there. And they asked me, they're like, wow, like look at those water slides. How come we don't have that? So I explained to them, the difference between us and them, and um, they got it. Our son being the older one, I think I was very impressed with, him and his interest in wanting to know about the difference between other cruise lines. But we are a family brand with Norwegian Cruise Line and Oceania Cruises. So I think that maybe one day we'll take them on an NCL cruise and see how they like it. But it personally and what why I try to educate travel advisors and guests. It's the same. I can go and pay everything up front on a Regent cruise and spend less than I would going on an NCL cruise. I'd probably end up spending more because of everything that I have to add on and pay for on the ship.
Let's talk a little bit about the future. Jody, do you have any travel booked?
Well, actually for work next month, I'm going on the Oceana Marina. So that is a great opportunity as well for me to see our sister brand
Uh-huh.
and the brand that is the one step below a Regent cruise. So many guests move from Oceana to Regent. That's the next step. So my next trip is on Oceana Marina. There'll be, I think there is a Princess cruise possibly at the end of the year, another work trip. But for my own personal travels, I think we're gonna do a cruise with Regent every other year. We're gonna stay in the U.S., do some local stuff for the summer trips for us.
What's on your cruising and travel bucket list?
We would love to do for our next cruise, an Iceland cruise.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's the plan. But as we all know, airfare is very expensive these days. So
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I had an Iceland cruise scheduled. It was from UK, not what's this?
London, was it London?
Not London, but the one south of London.
Was it Southampton?
Southampton, yeah. Yeah, we had a cruise to the fjords, leaving from Southampton, and among other places, Iceland was one of the stops. And then I had to cancel it because the airfare, I thought it was a typo. It was
Hmm.
unbelievable
Yeah.
compared to, I took a trip to the Med a couple of years ago, and the airfare on this trip versus what I on the Med trip was like triple. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think I'm going to have to delay my checking off that bucket list item.
Yes, and the same. That's why I decided, all right, well, we'll just skip a cruise and do something else and try to do it next year. So maybe hopefully the air situation will change, Paul, but yeah. So Iceland is on our family bucket list. After that, I don't know. My husband seems to be kind of picky with where he wants to go. So there's only so many places, but there's during the summer anyway. So we'll see.
Now you mentioned Regent is introducing some new ships. What else does the future hold for Regent Seven Seas that you can talk about? Anything coming up that you want to tell the world?
Well, I don't know if I could tell, that might be get me in trouble. No, but
My lips are sealed.
well,
No, I can certainly
well,
understand.
with the new ships though, what's really exciting, so just to give you, to help you understand, so our largest ships are 750 guests at 55,000 tons. So with the new Prestige class, we're adding 100 guests, so we'll be 850 guests with 77,000 tons. That space per guest ratio is going to be so much lower. I mean, right now our average space per guest ratio is 1 to 1.4. So when you are on board, there's not people everywhere all the time. You would think it's probably a 60% full sailing, and it might be a full sailing. But we're going to have new dining experiences, a Mediterranean venue. We're going to have new suite categories with loft suites, with floor to ceiling windows. There's going to be two double level suites. Um, and new things, and that's probably about all I can share. You know, we're going to keep evolving and keep doing and adding things to attract, of course, our guests. And I just think that everyone really, if maybe you're not a Regent client yet, eventually you might be. Eventually you'll, could turn into that. And I would say don't just maybe find out more information first and go through the pricing and
As I mentioned in the
all that.
intro, it is definitely high up on my bucket list and has been for quite some time. My entree into the cruising industry. I was a writer, and I wrote my first book. Featured a company that does a lot of Regent Seven Seas cruises, and at the time, this was 6 years or so ago. I didn't know what Regent Seven, what was the significance of them going on Regent Seven Seas, but that's all they do is go on very, very high end cruise ships. And in fact, my first experience with that company is what enabled me to be able to take my first river cruise. So yeah, their cruises tended to be on Regent Seven Seas, and so I knew it was something special, and it's been on my bucket list ever since. All right, I know that you are very busy, so I'm going to let you go. But before we do, Jody, a couple of or several fun or light cruise questions. How do you spend your me time?
Me time.
And you're looking at me like, what's that?
What's that? Yeah, I don't know if there's any me time. Probably just mindlessly scrolling on my phone. That might be a little bit of that. We are busy, but I love being busy with the kids and watching them play sports and grow. It's amazing. So,
I can imagine what it's like for you. My kids are older, but I went through the same thing. So, what's your favorite cruise drink and cruise food?
my favorite cruise drink is probably an espresso martini, and I like it creamy, so they add some Baileys in it. I met a bartender actually, it was in Alaska. He called himself Espresso Joseph. He made the best. They were awesome. So I always like to get a good espresso martini. And then as far as the food, I don't know if there's one specific thing because my husband's amazing at cooking steak. I love his steak. Um, but the cruise food, so the food on board Regent in the specialty and the main dining rooms, it's just elevated food, and I just love it. I was thinking the other day, oh, gosh, I miss this food. It's pretty picture. You get 5 courses, and it's just You just have to experience it. It's so good.
What is your most memorable, or wonderful, or funniest, or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
I think that the most memorable, and I tell this sometimes when I'm presenting or talking, but back in, I don't know, I'd have to even look up the year on, I actually went to Alaska and it was a Seven Seas Mariner a very long time ago. Uh, but met this wine steward, and every night in the main dining room, we'd sit at his table, became, friendly with this guy. He introduced me to this wine, and my husband was drinking this specific type of beer. It was Corona. And so, we had that cruise, and then 2 years later, went to Europe on a different ship in the Mediterranean. And the first night at dinner, there he was. And so he remembered us, chit chat, all that. We had dinner. When we went back to our suite that evening, there was that bottle of wine and the Corona that we had from 2 years before. And we didn't have it that night that we got on that sailing. So I don't know what
Mm,
kind of sorcery, that goes on with with them, but that is the kind of experience and things that we try to do for guests on board Regent. We call it heartfelt hospitality. And it just that I was mind blown that, like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe that it was there.
very nice. Did he know that you were a coworker?
I believe he did. Yes.
Okay.
I don't usually hide it with them, and we just chat. Oh, I work for Regent too, and it's very friendly, and so yeah, I'm sure I would have told him.
Okay. Then the last question, and I call this an oddball question. Oddball only in that it doesn't necessarily relate to cruising. So first of all, let me say welcome to Jodi's friends who are listening. Share one thing, Jodi, that my listeners and your friends don't know about Jodi.
Well, my husband doesn't even know, and
Oh, I like these kind.
the only thing that I can think of, and I've noticed it in the last couple of years, but I'm starting to get a little bit of OCD as I age with certain things, just the way that I do things, and or hang, have to hang my clothes on a hanger. They've got to be turned a certain way, and just I don't know. It's probably kind of scary that this is happening, but
So you're noticing a difference. I mean, this is
yes.
not something you used to think about.
No, no. And I, not being specific to it, oh, like setting things straight on a table. I make sure, and I have to move it so it's straight. I'm noticing this myself, thinking, what is going on with me? But that's it. That would be it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Many times, guests, I always ask a similar question to all my guests, or at least to my first time guests, and it's always nice when a guest shares something very specific and very unique about themselves, because we have listeners. We have listeners in 130 countries, and I know that someone is hearing something that they can hold on to, that they can relate to. So
Hmm.
so I appreciate you sharing that, because I've never heard of that where someone notices a change just from the passage of time. And
Hmm.
so if there's any of my listeners who are experiencing such a phenomenon, know that you're not experiencing it by yourself.
You're not alone. Not alone.
Yep, yep. Well, thank you so much, Jodi, for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast. I feel like I kind of know you now. I'm a client, of Regent, because I say I'm a client. I am a travel advisor, relatively new travel advisor. So I have not yet booked a Regent deal, but I would have reached out to you. I started my podcasting long before I started my travel agent business, so I would have reached out to you. I'm reaching out to you as because you're an interesting person as a podcast guest, but down the road I may interact with you as a in my travel profession.
Exactly.
But in any event, in a year or so, we'd love to have you back. Maybe after the new vessels are
Yeah.
out and you've gone on one, and you can kind of share your experience with the cruising community.
That would be wonderful. I would love to.
All right, Jodi, all the best to you. And as I like to say, we will see you on the ocean.
Thanks, Paul.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99, can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.